Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started. Today, we're diving into Neil Bradbury's A Taste for Poison. You brought this one to the table, and it's fascinating.
Here he is.
Our plan is to sort of walk through the book chronologically, the way Bradbury lays out these different poisons and the stories behind them.
Yeah, looking at the cases, he highlights how the poisons work and what they tell us about, history and science along the way.
Exactly. He starts off with a section called Biomolecules of Death, which is intriguing in itself.
It is, because the first poison he tackles is insulin, something we usually think of as life-saving.
Right. Discovered in 1921, a total game changer for diabetes. Before that, it was pretty much a death sentence, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Horrible fasting diets were the best they could do, so Bradbury immediately makes that point. Even beneficial molecules can be deadly.
Which leads straight into the first case.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Barlow, May 1957, found dead in her bath.
Yeah, and right away it seemed. Off. Healthy woman drowning in a tub. Very rare. And the scene itself was too still.
Her husband, Kenneth, mentioned something about ergometrin, trying to suggest an abortion attempt.
He did, but toxicology ruled that out pretty quickly. No trace of it. So police started thinking about something more sinister.
Insulin.
Insulin. The theory was he injected her, causing a hypoglycemic coma, and then drowned her.
But how could they prove it? You mentioned earlier testing for insulin in tissue was, impossible back then.
It was a huge challenge. They had to rely heavily on the symptoms Elizabeth showed before she died.
What were they?
Things like restlessness, being really tired, vomiting, sweating profusely, dilated pupils, classic signs of severe hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar.
Ah, okay, so the clinical picture pointed towards it, even without a lab test initially.
Exactly. And then, crucially, Bradbury describes the forensic breakthrough. They did develop a method to measure insulin levels post-mortem.
And they found high levels in her body.
They did. Very high levels. That was the turning point. Kenneth Barlow was arrested.
What came out at the trial?
Some pretty damning testimony. People recalled him talking years earlier about insulin being an untraceable poison. And another witness, a nurse, confirmed he had access to it because he was also a nurse. It suggested premeditation.
So even though drowning was the technical cause of death.
Bradbury argues the insulin coma made her unable to resist. Kenneth Barlow became the first person convicted of murder using insulin, served 27 years, though he always maintained his innocence.
But Bradbury concludes insulin isn't actually a great murder weapon, right?
Not really. It's slow, the symptoms can be recognized, and now we can tell the difference between natural and injected insulin. So, thankfully, murder by insulin is rare. It really sets up this theme of forensic science evolving.
Okay, so from insulin, Bradbury shifts gears to something with a much older, darker reputation. Atropine. From deadly nightshade.
Yes, a tropa belladonna. And he throws in a fun fact, tomatoes are in the same family. People were suspicious of them at first.
No.
Yeah. Atropine itself was isolated in 1833, and belladonna, Italian for beautiful lady, comes from its old cosmetic use. Dilating pupils for allure. Apparently, even the Mona Lisa might show its effects.
Wild. From beauty to poison. He also touches on the science behind it, nerve signals, the soups and sparks thing.
Right, the debate about how nerves communicate.
Hey.
And Otto von Loewy's famous dream experiment that proved it was chemical, discovering acetylcholine.
And how does atropine fit in?
It blocks the receptors for acetylcholine, so it disrupts nerve signals, causing those dilated pupils, blurred vision, fast heartbeat, dry mouth.
Okay, got it. And he uses this background for a more modern case, the Edinburgh tonic water incident in '94.
He does. That was bizarre. People buying Safeway tonic water and getting seriously ill, blurred vision, hallucinations. John and Marie Mason, Elizabeth Sharwood Smith, several victims.
It seemed totally random at first.
But it wasn't. It was Paula Gutter, a biology lecturer. His plan was to kill his wife, Alexandra, with atropine so he could be with his mistress.
You're kidding. How did the tonic water fit in?
He spiked several bottles of the store-brand stuff and put them back on the shelves. Create a panic, a diversion. He kept a much stronger dose for his wife.
That's incredibly calculated. And cold.
Extremely. 8 people ended up hospitalized. Forensics found his wife's bottle had way more atropine, like 300 milligrams compared to 11 to 74 in the others.
Did she drink it?
She likely only ingested about 50 milligram. Bradbury suggests the massive dose probably made it taste so bitter she couldn't drink much. Lucky escape, in a way.
Wow. And Bradbury connects this to older cases, too.
Yeah, briefly mentions Dr. Carlisle Harris using morphine back in 1893 and another doctor, Buchanan, using atropine on a cat in court to show how it dilates pupils in morphine poisoning. Shows these methods aren't entirely new.
But then there's the twist, atropine as an antidote.
Exactly. It's crucial for treating nerve agent poisoning, like things like sarin, Novichok. Remember the scrupple poisoning in Salisbury? They were treated with atropine.
So it can kill, but it can also save lives. Crazy.
Yeah.
What's next in Bradbury's deadly lineup?
Strychnine, the poison of choice for the Lambeth poisoner.
Ugh, strychnine. I associate that with old murder mysteries.
Hmm.
From the Strychnos nux vomica tree, used in rat poison.
Precisely. Bradbury points out how easy it was to buy back then, often sold as vermin powders. Very accessible.
And the Lambeth poisoner was Thomas Neil Cream.
That's him. An American doctor with a really shady past. Suspected abortions, maybe poisoning his own wife. Quite a history even before he got to London.
Yeah, the background Bradbury gives is disturbing. The forced marriage he just walked away from, the patient dying from a chloroform overdose under his care.
And he actually did time in Joliet Prison in Illinois for poisoning a man named Daniel Stott. There were even weird rumors about Masonic symbols on Stott's grave implicating cream.
Seriously creepy. And he gets out of prison, comes to London.
And starts poisoning prostitutes. Matilda Clover, Ellen Donworth, Alice Marsh, Emma Schreibel. He also tried to poison Louisa Harvey, but she survived. Used strychnine in each case.
How did they finally get him?
Matilda Clover's death was key. They found strychnine during the autopsy, and connecting the dots with the other victims and witness testimony, including from Louisa Harvey, built the case. He was hanged in 1892.
And how does strychnine actually kill? Bradbury explains the mechanism, right?
He does. It's horrific. It targets the central nervous system, specifically motor neurons. It blocks the action of glycine, which normally dampens nerve signals.
So the signals just go wild.
Exactly. Uncontrolled, agonizing muscle contractions, lockjaw, the body arching violently backward, that's episotnos, and the victim is conscious through it all. Death is usually from asphyxiation because the respiratory muscles seize up.
God, that sounds like one of the worst. Just awful. Okay, moving on chronologically. Aconite, wolfsbane.
That's the one. Another plant poison with a long, dark history, often hard to detect historically. Bradbury connects an older case with a very recent one.
He starts with the 19th century doctor, George Lamson.
Yeah, Dr. Lamson, a surgeon secretly addicted to opiates who apparently decided to poison his in-laws one by one for the inheritance money. Used aconite.
Sounds like a villain from a melodrama.
It kind of does. His brother-in-law, William Henry Malcolm, died suddenly after Lamson visited and gave him a capsule. Then another brother-in-law, Percy Malcolm, died suddenly after Lamson gave him some Dundee cake.
A poison cake. Classic.
Seems like it. The local doctors were suspicious but didn't recognize aconite poisoning. They called in an expert, Dr. Thomas Stevenson.
And he found it.
He did. Detected aconitine in Percy's organs. That, plus Lamson's money troubles and the fact he'd bought aconitine just before Percy's death, well, it sealed his fate. He was hanged in 1882.
Then Bradbury jumps over a century forward to 2009.
Right, to Lakvir Singh in Southall, London, a completely different scenario driven by jealousy. She was having an affair with Lakhvinder Lucky Chima and poisoned both him and his fiancée, Gurjeet Chung, with aconite she'd put in a curry.
Oh my God. In their food.
Yes. The symptoms hit them hard and fast. Terrible stomach cramps, paralysis, losing their sight, muscle weakness, vomiting, erratic heart rate. Lucky died within hours.
Did the fiancé survive?
Gurjeet did, remarkably after being in a coma. Police found aconite in a bag in Singh's coat. Clear motive, clear means. She was convicted.
And the mechanism for aconite. How does it work?
Bradbury explains it affects sodium channels in nerve and muscle cells. This messes up the electrical signals, especially in the heart, leading to arrhythmia and cardiac arrest. He also mentions a telltale sign, a burning feeling around the mouth.
It's like he's giving us the forensic checklist. Okay, next up is ricin. The Markov assassination.
Yes. This takes us into Cold War spy territory. Bradbury introduces Laboratory Number 1 in Moscow, the KGB's secret poison lab, working on untraceable assassination methods.
Cyanide mist, radioactive thallium. Sounds like Bond villain stuff.
Pretty much. And then the real-life case of Georgy Markov in London, 1978. The Bulgarian dissident who felt a prick on his leg on Waterloo Bridge, seemingly from an umbrella.
The infamous umbrella gun.
Well, the delivery system. He quickly developed severe flu-like symptoms, violent vomiting, high fever, and died a few days later.
What did they find?
The autopsy showed massive organ damage. And then the incredible discovery. A tiny pellet made of platinum and iridium embedded in his leg. It had contained ricin.
Ricin. How did they even identify it back then? Bradbury says it was tough.
Very tough. Ricin works differently from many poisons. It doesn't target one specific system. It attacks all cells by shutting down their protein factories, the ribosomes, so it doesn't leave easy chemical traces.
So how did they confirm it?
Initial tests ruled out metals. They considered plant toxins, and ricin was a prime suspect. Bradbury mentions they eventually used animal testing, gave a pig a similar dose, and it showed the same symptoms and internal damage as Markov. The coroner ruled it death by ricin poisoning, about 450 micrograms.
Tiny amount. And the suspects.
Suspicion fell heavily on the Bulgarian secret police, the Darzavna Sigurnost, probably with KGB help. An agent codenamed Piccadilly, possibly a man named Francesco Gunino, was suspected, but no one was ever convicted in the West.
Chilling. And Bradbury contrasts this state-level stuff with a more amateur attempt.
Yeah, Betty Miller in Vermont, 2017. She tried to poison fellow retirement home residents with ricin she made herself from castor beans using internet instructions. Luckily, she wasn't very successful and confessed. Shows the different ends of the spectrum.
Okay, from espionage to the hospital ward. Next is digoxin and Charles Cullen, the Angel of Death.
A truly disturbing case. Cullen, a nurse, moved between numerous hospitals in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, leaving a trail of suspicious patient deaths.
And the hospitals. They didn't stop him.
That's one of the most shocking parts. Often, they just let him resign quietly to avoid scandal, allowing him to move on and kill again. It took way too long.
What finally triggered a proper investigation.
At Somerset Hospital, the death of Helen Dean after Cullen gave her an injection raised flags. Then Reverend Florian Gall died suddenly, and tests showed his digoxin levels had spiked dramatically just before.
Digoxin. That's a heart medication, right?
Yes, used to treat heart failure, but it has a very narrow therapeutic window. The line between helpful and toxic is thin.
So the high levels in Reverend Gall were the key.
Yes, a vigilant pharmacist noticed irregularities. The Poison Control Center suspected foul play. Even then, the hospital apparently delayed calling the police.
Unbelievable.
Eventually, a fellow nurse worked with investigators, wearing a wire, which helped gather enough evidence to arrest Cullen in December 2003. He then confessed to killing dozens, maybe hundreds, over 16 years.
Horrifying. Led to the Cullen Law, didn't it?
It did, in New Jersey, mandating better reporting of suspicious healthcare worker behavior. Bradbury then explains digoxin's mechanism. It inhibits a crucial pump in heart muscle cells, leading to stronger contractions but easily causing toxicity.
Symptoms like dizziness, nausea, blurred vision.
Exactly. And high doses cause fatal heart rhythm problems. Bradbury also throws in the interesting, though debated, link between digoxin toxicity and Van Gogh's Starry Night. The yellow halos, the anthopsia, can be a side effect.
Huh. Never do that. Okay, after digoxin, Bradbury tackles a classic cyanide.
Cyanide. The go-to fast-acting poison in fiction, from Agatha Christie to James Bond. Bradbury acknowledges its notorious reputation.
But he also points out it's found in some surprising places, like paint.
Yeah, Prussian blue pigment, discovered accidentally in the 18th century, contains cyanide, but it's tightly bound within the molecule, making the pigment safe. Artists like Van Gogh and Picasso used it. It's even safely bound in vitamin B12.
So it's not always dangerous.
Our bodies can actually handle tiny amounts. The danger is a large, rapid dose, usually from salts like sodium or potassium cyanide.
And how does it kill so fast?
It reacts with stomach acid, forming hydrogen cyanide gas. This gas gets into the bloodstream and attacks the mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells. Specifically, it shuts down an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, stopping cells from using oxygen to make energy, ATP. Everything just stops.
Cellular suffocation, basically. And the almond smell.
Famous, but Bradbury notes not everyone can smell it due to genetics. He covers a historical case, John Towell in 1845, caught using the new telegraph technology after poisoning his mistress with cyanide. His defense about apple pips failed.
Apple pips, then a modern case.
Yes. Very tragic. Dr. Autumn Klein, a neurologist in Pittsburgh, died in 2013. Her husband, Dr. Robert Ferrante, a neuroscientist who actually researched cyanide, poisoned her.
He researched it. That's chilling.
His suspicious 911 call and internet searches for cyanide helped convict him. Bradbury also mentions antidotes like hydroxycobalamin, a form of B12, which work by binding tightly to the cyanide, making it harmless.
Right. Okay, that concludes the biomolecules of death. Now Bradbury moves to molecules of death from the earth, starting with potassium.
Yep, potassium. Another substance essential for life, crucial for nerve and muscle function, especially the heart's rhythm. It's all about the balance inside and outside cells.
But too much is deadly, and he uses the case of Beverly Ellett.
The Angel of Death nurse in the UK, a truly horrific case from 1991 at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital. She murdered 4 children on her ward and attacked several others.
How did she do it, and how did they catch her? It seems she used various methods, including insulin for some, but potassium chloride injections were implicated in several cardiac arrests and deaths. Liam Taylor, Kaylee Desmond, Paul Crampton, Becky Phillips, Claire Peck. A cluster of sudden collapses and deaths on Ward 4 when Ellett was on duty.
That must have raised alarms eventually.
It did. The pattern, her presence, missing log pages, and eventually finding abnormally high potassium levels in some victims linked the events.
How does excess potassium stop the heart?
Bradbury explains the heart's electrical cycle. Normally, sodium rushes in, then calcium for contraction, then potassium flows out to reset the cell for the next beat. Too much potassium outside the cell prevents this reset. The heart muscle cells can't repolarize properly, they can't coordinate, and the heart essentially stops beating, effectively cardiac arrest.
Wow. He also mentions another case, Christina Riggs.
Yes, in Arkansas, 1997. A tragic case where Riggs killed her 2 young children using potassium chloride she got from her nursing job, then attempted suicide the same way. She survived her attempt, but was later executed, ironically, by lethal injection, which includes potassium chloride.
Grim irony indeed. Okay, from potassium to something much more exotic and terrifying. Polonium. Litvinenko.
Polonium-210. Extremely rare, extremely radioactive, discovered by the Curies. Bradbury highlights its immense toxicity, micrograms are lethal, and its main producer being Russia.
And the target, Alexander Litvinenko, the former Russian FSB agent who defected and criticized Putin, poisoned in London in 2006.
After that infamous meeting in the Millennium Hotel with Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Koftin, he became ill very quickly.
What were his symptoms? They baffled doctors at first.
They did. Severe vomiting, diarrhea, hair loss, throat swelling, skin changes, rapid weight loss. It wasn't typical radiation sickness.
Why not?
Because polonium emits alpha particles, which don't travel far but do intense damage where they were deposited. It wasn't until they specifically tested for alpha emitters late in his illness that they found massive amounts of polonium-210 in his body.
And Bradbury explains why it caused those specific symptoms.
Yes. The alpha radiation devastated cells that divide rapidly, especially the lining of his intestine, leading to the vomiting, diarrhea, and inability to absorb nutrients. It also destroyed his bone marrow, wiping out his white blood cells and platelets, causing immune collapse and bleeding.
Just horrific. And the trail led back.
Traces of polonium-210 were found everywhere. Lugovoy and Koftin had been planes, hotel rooms, the teapot. Litvinenko himself accused Putin of ordering the hit from his deathbed. Russia denied it and refused extradition.
A chilling modern assassination. Next, Bradbury goes way back in history. Arsenic.
The classic poison, the inheritance powder, linked to everyone from the Borgias with their cantarella to maybe even Cleopatra or Alexander the Great, though that's speculation. Its popularity stemmed partly from its symptoms mimicking diseases like cholera.
What are the typical symptoms?
Acute poisoning causes severe gut issues, vomiting, diarrhea, pain, dehydration. Chronic, lower-level poisoning is more insidious. Ongoing stomach upset, headaches, cramps, eventual paralysis, heart issues, skin darkening, and those distinctive white lines on the fingernails called Mies lines.
And Bradbury mentions some weird historical stuff. Arsenic eaters. Mummification.
Yeah, apparently some people in Austria historically ingested arsenic regularly, building up a tolerance, even doing public demonstrations. And arsenic does slow decomposition, which might have fueled some vampire myths' corpses looking unexpectedly preserved.
Strange. And the main arsenic case he focuses on is Madeline Smith.
Yes, the sensational Scottish trial of 1857. Madeline, a young woman from a good Glasgow family, was accused of poisoning her secret lover, Emile Langelier, with arsenic after she got engaged to a wealthier man.
She wanted her incriminating letters back.
Yeah, exactly. Langelier became violently ill and died after Madeline supposedly gave him cocoa. He'd had similar, less severe illnesses before after getting drinks from her.
Did they prove she did it?
They proved she'd bought arsenic, citing killing rats as the reason. But the medical evidence about cause of death was debated, and the direct link was circumstantial. The jury returned the unique Scottish verdict of not proven. She walked free.
Wow. Not guilty, not innocent. Did Bradbury say what happened to her?
She moved to England, later the U.S., married, and lived a long life under a different name. He also notes arsenic wasn't always just a poison. It was used medically for centuries for things like syphilis and maybe malaria. Fowler's solution was a famous arsenic-based tonic.
Fascinating history. Okay, we're near the end of the book's journey. The last poison is chlorine.
Chlorine gas, which immediately brings to mind its horrific use in World War I. Bradbury discusses Fritz Haber, the chemist who pioneered it as a weapon, and the devastating attack at Ypres in 1915.
The descriptions are brutal chest pain, burning throats, suffocation.
Awful. Chlorine works because it dissolves in the moisture lining your eyes, throat, and lungs, forming hydrochloric and hypochlorous acids. These acids cause irritation, inflammation, and fluid buildup in the lungs, pulmonary edema, which can be fatal.
A terrible weapon, but Bradbury connects it to a different kind of crime.
He does. A much more recent case. Kimberly Sands, a nurse at a dialysis clinic in Lufkin, Texas in 2008.
What did she do?
She murdered patients by injecting sodium hypochlorite, basically, household bleach, into their dialysis lines.
Bleach into their bloodstream.
Yes. Several patients died suddenly or had severe reactions. Suspicion arose after 2 deaths, Thelma Metcalf and Clara Strange. A policy change meant one patient's bloodline was saved after an incident, and it tested positive for bleach.
How was she caught definitively?
Eyewitnesses. 2 other patients saw her inject bleach into another patient's line and frantically alerted staff. An investigation found bleach traces in her used equipment, and her computer history showed searches for bleach poisoning.
Unbelievable. How does bleach kill when injected?
Bradbury explains it causes hemolysis red blood cells burst. It also denatures proteins in the blood, causing clumps and potentially clots, and messes with hemoglobin's ability to carry oxygen. He briefly mentions another, less subtle attempt by someone else putting bleach in lemonade.
Bleach in lemonade. Not exactly subtle. So that brings us to the end of the specific cases.
Right. Bradbury wraps up with an epilogue, sort of reflecting on how poison detection has evolved from just observing symptoms to sophisticated forensic toxicology.
And emphasizing that double-edged sword, how many poisons are also medicines or tools to understand the body. He includes a final pick your poison chart, summarizing the key details for each substance discussed.
It's a really effective way to tie it all together.
Absolutely. So as you can see, this deep dive into A Taste for Poison reveals not just the mechanics of these deadly substances, but also the fascinating and often disturbing stories behind their use. From the cunning plots to the advancements in detection, each case offers a unique glimpse into history and the darker aspects of human behavior.
Definitely. Following Bradbury's chronology really highlights that evolution both of crime and the science used to fight it.
We hope this exploration has provided some, maybe surprising facts and a clearer understanding of the narratives Bradbury presents. What stands out to you most from these accounts? What questions do these stories raise for you about crime, science, and human nature? This is just the beginning. Bradbury's book is rich with detail and further insights. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.